am so excited. This is going to be an interesting podcast just because of the fact that the guest and I haven't talked for so long, and I have a lot of questions myself. But today is going to be so interesting because we have a former NFL athlete, a self-made transformational coach, international traveler, model, you name it. The list will go on and on. And so it's super exciting to find someone like this guest, Keyen Lage, who is living life on his own terms, making his own rules, accepting love from other people, and helping others enjoy life and purpose just the way that he does. So welcome to the podcast, Keyen Lage.
Jeff, thank you so much. That was so beautifully summarized the way that you
Well,
spoke into
good.
all
And I'm
that.
sure
Like
I've,
you covered everything in like literally the perfect amount of words. So very, very well done. I'm looking forward to jumping into that. Thanks for having
well,
me.
I think I probably missed a few things inside of there. I understand there's probably more going on in your life than even what I just described. But let's start with this because it's this will be a great way to probably kick it off. But we're going to get into your story. But you're joining us today from another part of the world. So what are you up to today?
I did a little ATV excursion through the mountains here. They're called the Echo Mountains here in Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt. So it's like a 9 hour drive from Cairo. Uh, Took a little dip in the Red Sea, had a good workout, and ate some good food. And now I'm here with you. So I think I'm well prepared to answer some good questions and bring a lot of value to the audience.
Well, this is exciting just because if you feel like you're maybe in a rut or need some motivation and some inspiration, you're probably going to get some of that today because Keyen Lage is totally full of that information and spirit. So Keyen, let's start. So you and I have kind of known each other since you were a young man. And so I'll tell you, I'll just kind of prep the audience a little bit for like how you and I know each other. So your father and I have worked together for somewhere between 1 and 2 decades combined. And so I know your dad obviously very well, but I remember going back to probably around your seventh and eighth grade years. And so you were playing football, obviously very passionate about football at that particular time. And you may not know it, but I attended some of your junior high games and then as you got into high school, attended those as well. And obviously, you were a pretty gifted athlete at that time. And with football being your passion, you knew at a young age that you wanted to go not just to college football, but you wanted to go to the next level and go to the NFL. And that drive really catapulted you into going next level with your workouts, diet, and all that type of stuff. So I'm going to turn it over to you because you can describe that path and where it brought you. And obviously, that's what really kickstarted everything for you and what you're doing today. So walk us through that experience of your football career.
Yeah, so I feel like I was very fortunate to have a grandfather who got to the NFL, who never got to play any games, decided to be a doctor instead. But I had somebody very close to me that made it to the NFL. So regardless of my situation, being a white kid from South Dakota and not being able to run a 4.40, the odds are probably stacked against me. But me knowing in the back of my mind that if my grandfather did it, I can do it. And so ever since I can remember, I was actively prepping myself to get to the NFL. I'm being 10 years old. I did push-ups by myself in my room without my parents having to say anything to me. And then as time went on through my high school and college career, I was more dedicated than anybody else. Having the cards naturally stacked against me, I knew I needed to do more than almost everybody else to be able to have the opportunity to play in the NFL. Also, not really going to a big name school in college didn't really help me either, but I believe that my drive and will and just pure tenacity of getting what it is that I want willed the situation into reality, but it was not for me in the long run. So as I got there, just as quick as I got there, I had a neck condition to where I could never play again. So just as soon as I was about to sign my first NFL contract, I was told by the doctors after getting a precautionary MRI on my neck that I would never be able to play again. So quickly, that dream since I was 10 years old was shattered just as quickly as it started.
Yeah, and so as you went to the camps and did all of that, and then finally you get this call, And I remember just, think about this from even your family perspective, and they haven't put in the work that you did. And I mean, and for the average person that's listening to this, I seen and was aware of the sacrifices and the things that most people would not take that you did. I mean, the workouts are one thing. Worked out harder than a lot of people that would probably even if you went to a D1 large D1 university in Alabama and LSU, work ethic was off the charts. But even the diet, the sleep, everything was very, very regimented, and you stuck to it like most people never would do. And that's really where I think you started to kind of find something inside of yourself. You obviously naturally have like you said, a tenacity about you and intenseness. But it was totally on display at that particular time. And who can't feel for somebody when you're like, hey, their lifelong dream just arrived, the next day the rug's pulled out from underneath you. And this is the part of the story that I think is so cool. You have a lifelong dream to be in the NFL. They tell you can't play, and then they kind of offer you somewhere else to go in the NFL. And I think most people would have jumped on this opportunity they provided you, but not you, Keyen. You're like, no thanks. So talk to us. So like, what they offered you?
Yeah, it was a bit weird. So normally when a player doesn't pass a physical, they just have some no-name guy call them and tell them, "Hey, you didn't pass your physical. We're not signing you anymore." But the general manager of Kansas City at the time gave me a call personally to tell me that he wasn't able to clear me. He wouldn't clear his son if his son had that injury, so he couldn't clear me. But in that same call, he offered me a job as a scout on the team, which was a bit odd to me, processing the emotion of him telling me I'd never play again while also offering me a job. So naturally, he said, "Hey, you don't have to make a decision right now, but get back to me in the next few weeks when you have a chance to settle down and relax with your family for a little bit." And after about a week and a half of sitting with it and really feeling into what I want for myself, I realized that I didn't really care about any other players. I loved the sport because I was playing it and I was so enamored with it because it was relevant to me. But when it had to do with the performance of all other players, I didn't really care at all. I was like, it doesn't matter to me. I don't care about 40s. I don't care about other people playing. Like, I liked it because I did it. And so naturally, it wasn't what I was inspired to do. So I said no.
And like I said, I think most people would have jumped on it. And you're like, hey, no thanks. I'm gonna go do my own thing over here. And
Mhm.
what's so ironic about this is they want you to go in and scout. And really at that point, like what's your hands on when you're basically just saying, hey, third party source, me telling you like how good this athlete is, and then not actually being able to work with them. So you kind of just trailblazed and created your own destiny at this point, and obviously it's worked out really well, as people will find out here shortly. But
Mhm.
your dreams are crushed, and key, and all of a sudden you started your own career, and the
Mhm.
business side of it is taken off. So just tell everybody, like, how did you do it? What was it? And like, was there a moment in time where you said, you know what, I'm gonna go and transform it? And even like physically, you went from big, I mean, don't get me wrong, still very muscular, but went from bulk and all of that to now shrinking, and then creating this body now that like gets you contractually obligated to even like take photos and some other things. So walk us through this whole process.
Yeah, so when football got done, staying in the game, not as a player, wasn't in the cards for me. I was a finance major in college and always thought that I'd be a financial analyst if football didn't work out. But when that became a reality, I said, absolutely not. I do not want to sit in an office. So what did I do? I decided to just ride my bike to the library every day for about a month straight and just read book after book. And I was offered a book recommendation by one of my mentors growing up that really helped me physically get to the place I needed to for football. That this book was called The Biology of Belief by a guy named Bruce Lipton. And he talks about the science of how to create your own heaven on earth or how to manufacture an existence that you feel super inspired by and living a life that you feel very excited with. And when I read this book, I applied a lot of the principles spoken about without consciously knowing that I was doing it, but I could take it to another level. And the fact that it could be manufactured is what fascinated me so much. So I said, well, I want to be able to help other people do this because I've already done an element of this stuff, but I'm going to continue to do more of this for myself and help other people be able to do the same thing. And I said, well, what can I do that's the closest outlet for me to be able to do this? And personal training was the first thing that popped up in my mind. I always said I'd never do something like that. I had an association with it being of, well, that's what people do when they don't know what they want to do with their lives. But I figured it was the most easy outlet for me to be able to start to help other people in this way. And at the same time, I began to transition my understanding of what it was to be healthy. Getting to the NFL was all about being as muscular and fast as possible, not about being as internally healthy as possible. So when I transitioned from more of becoming Hulk to becoming as internally healthy as possible, I got obsessed with learning about that element of things. So after about 4 months of saving money, I think I had like $7,000 in my bank account. I moved to Miami and ended up being a personal trainer down there at a gym called Equinox, and I specialize in internal health. So after about 8 months of intensely studying internal health, I was able to come up with a program for people with autoimmune conditions and different digestive disorders. So I ended up quitting my job as a personal trainer and scaled that product online and learned for the first time about 7 years ago what it was like to work fully online. And it came with all kinds of ups and downs. But after not making the amount of money I was making as a personal trainer, starting my own business online, I had to move to a new country that was less expensive than Miami. And so from there, I moved to Colombia and ended up growing my business, my internal health business from there for about a year. And I'll stop right there.
So, and this has led to a lot of different experiences for you. And so you've decided, you know what, this is my path. This is what I want to do. How did you how did you find your first client, so to speak? I mean, and so like even like to get to Miami, did you research out like a gym at that point, or how did that all even get connected originally?
Yeah, so I very intensely researched different gyms in Miami, and I had a huge list of all the gyms, and I called all of them. And I ended up getting an interview with a few of them, and then Equinox, the big luxury gym chain down there, is the one that really stuck out to me. And after an on the phone interview, I got one of my good friends to interview as well, and he got the job too. And so it was a brand new gym down in Miami. And so him and I decided to drive down there, pack our cars up and drive down there together. So I did do a lot of intense research on finding gyms that we could work at, and we did have a job lined up when we moved down there.
And so your clientele base, I'm assuming it's changed a little bit since then, because I think your focus originally, as you said, obviously one are outside, and then as you just mentioned, the inside part of it. And I know that you are um, very knowledgeable on the holistic health, emotional intelligence, all of those things, and really finding a balance of your internal and external livelihood. But I'm going to assume then the clientele base that you had at that point, it was more about, okay, I've got to find some people. It could be anybody and everybody, and now your focus is really on those people that are probably in a little more rare air, that have had success in their life, but now all of a sudden maybe they found themselves in a little bit of a rut. And I probably can't speak to it all that well, but there's probably a lot of those folks out there that they've achieved a lot of success, but because they're a founder or a CEO, they don't really have anybody to talk to that they could relate to. Would that be correct? And that's where you kind of come in.
Yeah, absolutely. So after about a year of doing the internal health stuff with working primarily with women between the ages of 30 and 50, I got a little bored of that. And that's when being surrounded by a lot of entrepreneurs found a gap in the marketplace for guys that are already successful in their own right, but don't have a confidant or someone that they can lean on to be able to help process different issues or blind spots that they're not aware of. So then I transitioned into that space, and I've been doing that for about 5.5 years now. And I've worked with different types of guys and girls for a year. I only worked with women as well. But I spent the last 5.5 years working with this demographic of people that you're referring to, the people that tend to be the ones that everybody else comes to, whether that's in their family, their friend group, or their business, but doesn't actively have someone that they can truly let go with to be able to process through whatever it is they're going through or be able to understand what's next for themselves.
Yeah, and so as you've gone, like you said, you kind of surround yourself, and I think you would agree that from your experiences, the people that you surround yourself, we've heard this, most people have, the five people you surround yourself with is kind of who you become. And I think that you run with a circle of people that have the same type of drive, have the same type of adventurous spirit. Most people in this life that I'm going to have a conversation with didn't say, you know what, I decided to go to Egypt, hop on a four-wheeler, take a dip in the Red Sea, get a little workout on the beach, and then I'm going to pop up on a podcast. So the adventure of the traveling. So you've been all over the world. Talk a little bit about, like, what is the drive for that? Is it part of your work? Is it part of your holistic work? And what does that mean to you in all of your travel?
Yeah, so I would say part of me needs it. And some people might look at it and be like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool that you're doing that. I could never do that," or "It takes so much bravery or courage," or whatever people say. But to be honest with you, I don't see it like that. For me, it's almost like I need it. I'm someone that needs a certain level of stimulation to be able to continue to feel very grounded. And so where most people they need a sense of stability to feel grounded, I need a sense of instability to feel a little grounded. I need to be able to be using all my different senses at all different times and being in the stimulation of having to work my way out of those situations or through situations. And so for me, it really lights my heart up and allows me to feel so alive doing this in a way that I think most people just don't really resonate with. So I'm not sure if it's just kind of who I am and someone that just needs a certain level of stimulation, but it lights my heart up to be able to just go to other places and be able to live in this place of being excited and stimulated. Now, at the same time, I could say it massively benefits my business too, because people see me doing certain things that they think are really cool and that they'd like to be able to have the capacity to do as well. So it definitely does benefit my business, but also my internal world. There's a lot of things I understand about myself through being put in situations that I don't know how to easily navigate that ultimately help me be able to become a more well-rounded human. Whereas when I'm in an environment where I'm is very predictable and I'm constantly having to show up as the same version of myself, there's certain parts of myself that I never really had the chance to be able to see. So being put in certain circumstances, certain adverse circumstances that I have to try to get my way out of reveals certain parts of myself that I have the opportunity to be able to one, get to know better, and two, resolve if I feel like it doesn't necessarily benefit me.
Yeah, international travel can throw you some curveballs just along within itself. But then once you get off the plane and out of the airport, there's no one's there to catch you, right? You are on your own, and you're going to rely on yourself or your friends. Different language, different foods, different processes, different laws, and so you cast yourself right in the midst of it. And so my question would be, like, how do you identify? Is it something where you individually say, I'm going here? Do you throw a dart? Do you pick out specific spots in the world to say, I haven't been there? Like, what motivates you, or I don't want to say motivates you, what directs you to wherever it is that you go in the adventure it's there? How do you discover them? And then, like, how do you implement that? Is it something you say, I'm going on my own, or do you go with your friends, or how does that look?
Yeah, so it all depends on where I'm at in a specific season of life. So I feel I'm very tuned into myself and what I'm excited about. So I really don't look too deep into my inspirations as far as where I'm being pulled. I more so just like to stay open to listening And so having a very strong connection, I would say, with God and within my internal world, I'm aware of certain pulls that I'm experiencing to different places. So I could say it's not that deep, but actually it is super deep. I just choose to not really have to justify the inspirations that come up in me too much. So if I feel this slight childlike excitement or curiosity toward a certain place, then that's where I'll go. And then from there, I'll be as present as possible in that experience and then just notice where I'm being driven to next. So I try not to think too deeply about it because then I start to get clogged up as far as my ability to be open to receiving new information or new inspirations. I more so just like to follow that excitement and curiosity that ultimately never fails me. And looking back on all my experiences and places I've been, I can always clearly understand why afterward. But for me, life's more exciting and more fun being able to just follow the inspiration. And instead of understanding fully why first, being able to look back and be like, oh shit, that's why I did that. Oh, that makes so much sense. I couldn't have wrote that up myself. I couldn't have mentally manufactured that experience. That could have only happened from following this sense of deep excitement and curiosity that I love to live in constant awe of.
Yeah, so you just mentioned it about your faith. Obviously you understand yourself at a high level, but I also I think you understand your relationship with God very well, and you would have to have the faith to do the steps that you take to start a business from scratch, essentially going in and then guiding people. Do you find like I got a couple, I got Keyen, I got so many questions.
Let's
Do
do it. Come on. I love it.
let's fire this up. We're gonna get into the world that I love to go into and ask this. So you have this like I love what you just said. I have this childlike excitement, and that's what draws you to go to a place. And do you feel like in today's world, the childlike excitement, there's just so many people that don't have it. And hey, I can point my fingers right here. There's times where it's like something will excite me and then I can dismiss it. So you work with people all the time that probably deal with this. How do you help people overcome this?
Well, most of the time, there's multiple voices that exist within our own heads that are constantly combating that voice of excitement and curiosity. And so what I have to do is I have to go deeper into understanding these different voices that these people that I work with are identifying with that isn't allowing them to be able to stay connected to the truest voice or that voice of God speaking to them through them. So once we resolve and I help them separate or disassociate from the voices that are telling them to combat the voice of inspiration, then it becomes much easier. But oftentimes, those voices, they can mask themselves as being morally superior, they can mask themselves as being responsible, and we can so easily give credence to them when actually they're just there trying to prevent us from being able to step into the scariness associated with being in the unknown of our childlike curiosity and excitement.
Oh man, you just said it. That I'm going to be responsible. I can't go do that because that would be an
That's the big one.
irresponsible. Gosh, that I can find myself in situations where I've said that and say, well, that's just not, that doesn't make financial sense to go do that. I'm not worth. Would you also say that people also say I'm not worthy of that? I think Carrie and I had conversations this weekend about that and just say, you know what, I didn't really earn that or deserve it. I find that even like right now, just to take time off and just to like take a break from everything is becomes very like almost like I can't rest. And so when you travel, like right now you're in Egypt, do you unplug from everything and really just kind of stay present in the moment, or are you kind of always checking in? Does it feel like your life is so blended with work, or can you just like go, you know what? It's out here and I'm not touching it.
Yeah, so right now, since I've only been traveling for about like 10 days or so, I'm still blended a little bit with the online world and world of my clients. But in the next month, I'll have nearly all my clients done with and fully present in whatever experiences that I'm doing. I'm going to Russia August 15th, so by then is when I want to have all my clients be done entirely. But I have a time every year where I tell all my clients I'm done working with them. So I intentionally plan time for me to be able to separate from all of that. But it can be very difficult because we're taught in this world to be able to be successful, we have to work all the time. And the more we work, the better off we'll be. But I don't believe we're inherently created to operate like that. I believe we're created to operate more in sprint and walk type of seasons where we're fully lost and inundated in our work. And then we go through seasons where we're not as intensely involved in it. I believe efficiency is the most important thing that we can tune into instead of just pure volume. And when we know how to be able to do that and understand what actually contributes to the bottom line of our success and get rid of all the fluff, then we have to work less, or we get to work less, I should say, and be more efficient with our time and ultimately make the same or more money. Because oftentimes the money thing is the thing that prevents a lot of people from being able to do what they want to do. And there's a lot of stories that people have wrapped up in that. And so I'm also not someone that would just say, fuck it, just go and travel and do whatever. But I have to know people's specific circumstances to be able to understand that a little more. But the thing that a lot of people don't account for is that our minds only have a certain amount of capacity to understand potential and possibility. So I realize my mind is so limited. Like my mind only has the ability to comprehend what it's experienced. That's it. So if my mind's thinking based on only understanding possibilities that I've experienced, then why would I listen to it? If there's infinite possibility that exists in this world as far as how to get what it is that I want, why would I constantly be identified with my mind? So I think my mind is pretty strong and pretty intelligent, but I also massively see how it's incapable of really being able to know what happens when I do A. What will B really happen? I don't know. I actually have no clue. So, with understanding how dumb my mind actually is, I've allowed myself to be able to step more into the space of infinite possibility where when I'm incredibly excited and driven toward doing something, I know that it is for my best good, that will involve me making the most possible money in the long run and having the most successful relationships also. So, I've developed a different operating system based on my understanding of our minds that I believe serves me to the highest capacity and really I mean, the results have shown that I've made more and more money over time with operating in this place, and I've only gone deeper in my intimate relationships as well.
Yeah, and you probably go deeper in your faith because you know that, hey, God's got me. I'm like, and I think what you said earlier, the voice that I'm listening to is the one that I have the most faith in. Why would I not pursue it? And if I'm truly in that space where I know the voice that I'm listening to isn't the one that isn't that monkey that's telling me all this. It's the one that's guiding me to go where I'm supposed to go. Why wouldn't you have success? And I think you've broke the code to, so to speak, as so few people do. Um, and that served you very well. And so, I'm looking at this now. You're going to Russia. You have like so most people, all we're seeing right now is your head, but physically you stay very in shape. Mentally, obviously, you need to, and so you have specific, diet, things that you would eat, wouldn't eat, probably. I don't know how strict that has to be at certain times, but there's when you do this travel, most people think of travel like, well, I get on a plane, I go here, and then they're going to eat, drink, do all these things like it's a vacation. But when you go to these places, how do you like navigate your way through this to say, well, it's not all about the luxuries and everything, because you go further into that travel to kind of still continue to find yourself and find experiences that probably aren't what most people think of when they think about travel.
Yeah. So because I developed it as more of a lifestyle compared to a getaway, it definitely has allowed me to have a little bit of a different association with travel. But to be honest with you, I don't need an escape from my life like most people do. So when they travel, they're escaping from some element of their life. So they're doing things that aren't necessarily as beneficial for them. Now, don't get me wrong. I love having a fun, wild, crazy experience just as much as the next person. But I don't need an escape from my life. And I know that when I'm taking care of myself, I feel the best. So for me, it's not really that hard because I know good things happen the more I take care of myself, and I'm not escaping from anything. So because I'm fully in alignment with what I feel is right and best for me, I'm constantly doing things that will ultimately be the best thing for me.
Gosh, you're hitting me on all cylinders today, Keyen. So this is, I think most people listening to this, that there's one more thing you just said. It's like we look at our experiences when we leave the comfort of our home, our community, and we look at that as our escape, and that's our vacation time. And it almost becomes like my life is so mundane and the grind of the work. I need to take the time away. And you've figured out how to blend all that together. And I'm going to ask you this question as well. There's so many people who are listening that they've been at the same job, they've been doing the same thing, and they're like, "Well, that's your life, Keyen. That's great. You started it that way, but I can't do something like that because I've been at this job for so long. I'm too old. I've got the responsibilities that you don't have." Is that all bullshit?
No,
So
they're right. I did from the beginning build a life that I don't have to try to deconstruct. They're 100% correct. I don't think that's bullshit. And I do believe that it would be very difficult being 40 years into your life and realizing that the entirety of your existence has been you living life out of obligation or doing things because you felt like you should or needed to. That is a very difficult thing to come to terms with. And that's something that I will actually never get to experience. So I do want to say firsthand that you're right. If you do say that, that is super difficult to be able to come to that awareness. But at this point, it's really not anything off my back if you don't want to change something. But if you do want to change something, I'm open and willing to having that conversation to help you be able to do it. So you can either continue to live as you are, and that's okay, or you could take the other option, which is doing something different. So, yes, you can maybe say that I don't know what it's like because I don't, but that still doesn't change the fact that you can stay where you are or you can make a decision to do something different.
yeah, and you described that a little bit earlier too. It's like when people want to, if someone says, "Hey, I want to make that change," as you said, you dive into the unknown, but you go into it with full faith. And I think that's where most people, the limitations are like we said, they're kind of countless, and the voices in our head. But I think it also comes down to sometimes we stop and say, "I don't know what that looks like. That's scary." And like, what happens if it doesn't work out? But we don't let that next voice come in and say, "What if it works out fabulous and your whole life is different?" And I think that's where you come in. And some people just need someone to talk to. But I also, from your experiences and from the things that you've done, going all the way back to high school and college, just the focus of what you had, and making the sacrifices that you did, all started this whole thing. And so now you can speak to a lot of this. And like I said, you live a lifestyle that's different from other people, but you did it on an on purpose life, and you don't have to follow someone else's rules. And so I could see where if you've got a client, and I think I read this somewhere like on your website, your best client is someone that goes, I do have the resources to go do this type of travel. I do have a high drive level. I'm a certain personality that you could connect with because they're probably more entrepreneurial and those types of things. So, I think you just said if you wanted to have that conversation, it doesn't mean that you don't have to be a CEO. You don't have to be somebody that lives at a certain level of eliteness or whatever we want to call it. to still get benefit from Keyen Lage. So
Yes.
do you have a lot of that information? Is there, your Instagram and all those things? You obviously have a strong internet presence. Have you ever thought about like writing a book or anything like that?
That's a great question. I've had a lot of people that have gave me a lot of different opinions on what they feel that I should do with the information that I have and things that I know, but I don't want to, I guess, in this season of life. And
Right.
I'm more wanting to just continue to explore, and it's not time for me to do that. So there's not really that much. I guess I have a lot of podcasts. I've done like 50, 60 podcasts that people
Yep.
can find information about my belief systems and things that I do with people. But outside of that, I don't really have a whole lot as far as a book or YouTube or anything. So you got to kind of try to catch me.
Yeah, and that's now I will promote your podcast on this as well because I think that anyone that's listening to this, you're going, wow, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You can get, I mean, like I said earlier, you surround yourself with people that are like-minded. Some of it's probably some self-discovery even on your podcast, but those are the types of podcasts that are important to listen to because there's a million things out there. We have a ton of choices, but when you have someone like Keyen that lives a little different lifestyle than most, there's a lot to be learned through that, and then with the people that you're running with. So I think that anyone that's interested in a podcast, I like the Ed Milet show. It takes me. It's a bit of an escape too, just because some of those folks on there, the billionaire lifestyle, and then you get to hear someone that's pretty humble and still like, hey man, I put my shoes on just like you do. It's like, you can go achieve whatever you want. You just have to go do it. So what's next for you? Obviously, you said you need to be stimulated. What's this look like? Is there a bigger plan beyond what you're doing? Are you at a level right now where life is where you want it? I think you already would say your life is where you want it to be, but do you have a big audacious goal that's sitting out there that you're like, I really want to go do that?
No, not really.
Wow, that's the fact that I had you
Yeah.
quiet for 5 seconds on with an answer like that. I was surprised. I was waiting for like, yeah, man, Mount Everest is next, or something along that line.
Yeah, no, I'm always open to new inspiration. But I haven't been setting goals for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years now, because I found that when I just stay connected to that source of inspiration and that childlike curiosity and excitement within me, I get everything that I want. So to me, setting long-term goals, it's kind of boring and too predictable. So I found this love for this unpredictability in life, where I find that the more I step into and lean into the unknown, I naturally just get more of what feels good to me. So I focus more on following what feels right and good to me rather than specific goals. And so anything that I get is just an extension of what I'm already experiencing. So there's going to be some very big things that I end up doing and I end up having that won't be things that I'm consciously trying to get, but more so byproducts of me consistently living in alignment within that greater curiosity and excitement within me.
Yeah, just something recent. Andy Andrews kind of alluded to that, where he's like, I don't set goals and I never did. And it's like, I've had
Yeah.
success, but it's not a goal driven thing. I let it kind of come as it goes. And then after I've achieved it, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? That was something I've always wanted to do, but I didn't know it at the time until it already happened. And that's pretty cool. I've got
Yeah, and
one,
I think let me one more comment on that, Jeff, is
yeah,
I think it's because there's also an element of realizing that there's no if I have a goal, there's no kind of like, oh, I need to make that happen. I don't have that within me because I understand that whatever I do accomplish or whatever goals that I do end up achieving, they're just fleeting senses of excitement. And so because I don't have this like, oh, I'm so driven, excited to go get this goal, then it just wouldn't make sense for me to set any because I know that the goals are just things that people do. We just go after things because that's just what people do. And generally, if we want to live relatively exciting or stable life, we mentally go after things. But I don't look too much deeper into it because I know how none of the goals actually matter anyway. And above trying to think about, oh, well, what happens if you do take action? You do get these things. I more so have a perspective of none of it matters. Like all the things that we believe matter don't matter. And if they don't matter, then why wouldn't I just do what I feel like is right for me to do? So it's this like deep internalization of it doesn't really matter. So because I have that, it just allows this part of me just to say, well, let's see what happens. Like that's probably the my motto in life is, well, let's see what happens.
And I think that was
And
what you
normally, yeah, go ahead.
well, and I think that that was one thing that even Andy Andrews had said, and it's what you're saying. I create a goal, I go achieve it. I thought that would make me happy. I thought that would make me feel this way. And then when you get it, nothing was any you didn't feel it, your life wasn't transformed, and all of a sudden you're like, well, that's all that was. And now I'm like, well, now not,
Yeah.
so you all of a sudden you're like, well, I got to find another goal. And eventually you just keep chasing something that never brings you the true happiness. And I think your relationships with people give you a lot of purpose. And I think just when you experience people in general, so in these travels, you meet someone, I think you focus so deep on the genuine connectivity with somebody, and there's something to be learned all the time. And we're so good at just dismissing everybody that we meet. Hell, they can't even remember the person's first name 10 minutes after they've met them. And I think for you, you like to personally touch somebody and leave an impression on them and them to leave an impression on you. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I was on a boat on the Nile River like a week ago, and there was a belly dancer on the boat. And I was like, she is beautiful. Oh my gosh. And she was performing, and I could tell she kind of like kept looking at me too. And her and I ended up having a conversation, and we ended up hanging out, and we were both just like, what's in this for us? Like, why did I meet you? Why did you meet me? Like, what is this experience that we're meant to have, or what are we supposed to teach each other? Or what's going to come from this? And I love the excitement of the unknown of that experience, and it was just such a beautiful interaction that we had. And so I do really, really enjoy that, what you're talking about. I think you're spot on in regard to just finding and noticing the people that I'm magnetized to, and then just exploring what those relationships might be, and really giving myself that permission, no matter how nervous I might be to engage in those interactions, really just pushing myself to go deeper into asking the questions or uh, having an interaction where there's deep intimacy and connection that's had.
You just said it. So many people are afraid to ask the question, hey, why do you think we met? It gets awkward for some folks. And I think that's where the connectivity really comes in because something's causing that curiosity, but we just fail to act on it. And so we
But
lose that.
you gotta learn to love the tension. You gotta learn to love the tension. That's life is lived in the tension. Life is lived in it. So I talk about tension all the time. But if you can get into the tension and find a way to establish a little bit more of a positive association with it, then it's a little easier to be able to do those things. But I still experience tension all the time. But my association with the tension is one of, okay, this is exciting, instead of, oh, I can't do that. So it's not about getting to a point where there's never any tension, where you can just constantly always do whatever all the time, because then I think it would take away the value, I think, of some things. I think the tension is what gives it value. And so instead of being able to look at the tension as being something that's scary to run away from and not allowing yourself to be able to do, I think it's more of an indicator telling you that, hey, this is striking a chord deep within yourself. And just because there's a lot of tension means there's the potential for a lot of incredibleness from that interaction. So seeing it more as an indicator rather than something that should be pushing you away from whatever your heart's being driven towards, or who you're being magnetized to.
Yeah, it goes back to like what's the outcome of this? What if I get rejected? It's where our brain
I
goes
don't
right
know. I
away.
have no clue, right? I have no clue. I have zero idea of what is going to happen. I don't know. I have no clue. Zero clue. So don't even let the brain go there. I don't know. But what I do know is that there's something there and I need to just say hi. Let's see what happens.
I love that. And that's the thing. We're like, oh my gosh, what happened? Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, what happens if this? But it's like, what if it's oh my gosh, what if this is my future bride? What if this is the next person that's going to introduce me to the right connection? What if this person
Mm.
hires me? I mean, all those things. But for whatever reason, with the monkey brain goes in, and then you figured out how to filter that out. And so that's
Well, and
what,
not even filter, just realize how dumb it is.
right?
Like my mind is so dumb. Like my mind, like people would look at me and be like, "You are very smart," but I really know how dumb I am because how limited my mind has the ability to understand things. My entire mind's understanding of the world is solely based on my limited experiences. And I would say I've had a lot of experiences relative to most people, but I still look at my brain as being so limited. The only thing that knows more is infinite intelligence and inspiration. And I stay tuned into that by being connected to myself and having that adequate relationship with God that exists within me. So realizing that my mind is dumb and really internalizing that allows me to be able to give less credence to it.
It's so good, Keyen. It's so good. We're running up on the hour. I got two major questions. One, because it's unique, and I wasn't aware of the TV show. I'm not familiar with it, but I understand you got casted on it. It was like a game. Is it like a game show, or it was a challenge type of show? And you were on that, and it sounded like you got dismissed off the show sooner than what you felt was appropriate.
Yeah, for sure. It was a spin-off of Squid Game. It was like the number one show on Netflix maybe 2 years ago.
Okay.
And there was a reality TV show for the game. And so I was casted on it, went through like 2.5 months of the casting process, and then we got flown out to the UK for the show itself. And I learned a lot about reality TV during that experience, uh, learning that reality TV isn't reality at all. So
Most people
yeah, but it was yeah, I mean, but it was an incredible experience to be able to go on the show, and the quality of the interaction was amazing. It just wasn't what I thought or many of the other people thought that it would be. But it makes sense. You have that many people on a show, they have to naturally move some things around and do things in a certain way that isn't based on a free market, essentially. So, but it was a cool interaction and a really good understanding that I gained through the interaction.
Yeah, I have not seen it, so I'll probably have to figure out how to do that. I dropped my Netflix account here a few months ago,
Yeah.
for so many reasons. But the other question I had, so I heard recently, so obviously, I love the pursuit of wild game. And I heard that you recently were able to harvest an animal using the spear, which has kind of been a little bit of I'm jealous. I'm just going to say that I've seen this done. I'd like to try it, but for whatever reason, the bow and arrow just seems so natural to me, and I go, I'd hate to have the opportunity slip through my hands because I'm holding the wrong weapon. But so tell us what happened there.
Yeah, I went wild boar hunting. We have a big population of wild boar down in South Florida. And so we drove up about 2.5 hours north of Miami, and there's a big farm there on Native American reservation that has a ton of big old hogs, wild hogs running around out there. So me and a few friends went out and some wild boar hunting with spears. I wish it was as savage as I thought it would be, but actually it was a little more organized and contained than one might think. So we let the dogs go. We were in four-wheelers and we were driving around the property and we let the dogs go, and the two dogs would find a hog and they would start barking a certain bark when they found the hog. And then once they cornered the hog, they would make a different bark to tell the guide that they had the hog ready for us. So these dogs would pin a hog in a corner, like these big old hogs. These dogs weren't even that big either. It was crazy. And then we'd run up and someone would come up behind the hog, grab it by its hind legs, flip it, pull its legs out, flip it, and then the guide would get on its back and open up its chest, and someone else would come with the spear and put it right in the heart of the hog. So I wish it was us just running around with spears, like throwing them at hogs, but it was actually a lot more of a efficient process, I would say, to be able to do it. But I can tell you this, the process of having the spear, putting the spear into the hog's heart, and really just like looking at it in the entirety of the situation, I was just feeling so much gratitude in my heart during that interaction of just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because it's a completely different game compared to when you shoot something from afar, compared to seeing its face as you're killing it up close.
Right.
And that was a really, really powerful interaction for me. And noticing all the gratitude that I felt while taking the life of that hog was extra special.
Yeah, I agree. That obviously with my passion being that too, that's why the bow and arrow, it makes it, and I don't like to use the word personal because that always sounds weird because it's an animal, but
That's a
you
no, that's a good way to put it though.
yeah, and it's, I think it's a greater appreciation because it, in this particular case, people might hear it and say, well, that sounds horrible, you do, yeah, but I'm like, that's how hogs are harvested typically, in that type of deal. I'm like, if you had to walk around, they're not dumb. They can, and they can run. So it's like to walk
And
around.
they're beasts too. Those things
Yeah,
got big old husks on them, and they'll get you.
yeah. I've seen one video where a guy successfully was walking and he was able to kind of fool one and get above it in a ditch and then able to plunge a spear in it. But otherwise, going back to prehistoric type of hunting, it would you could be out there for weeks or months before you actually would get a spear in an animal. So the strategy behind it was probably one, but that's cool because that, like you said, it's one more experience that you can go, hey, never did that before. I did it and I don't regret what I did. It was another experience that you can say, hey, that was meaningful to me in whatever form it was. So it's pretty cool. And I don't know wherever the meat went, whether you got some of it or not. Obviously, there's always some
We
gratification.
did.
Yeah, it's always some gratification too to say, hey, I'm gonna actually digest what I've harvested. No different than if you're growing crops or something like that, where there's certainly gratitude and appreciation for what went into it. So Keyen, we're up on the hour. I know you're a busy guy. You're in Egypt. You've probably got some other stuff that you want to do. I appreciate you taking time. I'm going to share your podcast. I think there's so much value in what you bring, not just to the clients you work with, but to the world and what you continue to do. Your spirit and the way that you live your life is inspiring to me, and I think so many others. And so you're blessed and you're living life the way that so many people probably wish if they could do it over again. But I think you would agree, wherever you're at is where you're supposed to be, right?
Hmm.
I mean,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And regardless, what other way do you have to think about it other than that?
right.
So even if that's not technically true in the grand scheme of things, that's kind of how you have to look at it. So
Right.
just
Right.
that's the only way. That's the only way to think about it. That's the only mental model to be able to use in life, really.
Yeah.
So whether it's true or isn't true, it's kind of really the only choice that you have is to look at your situation in that way, I think.
Yeah. Like that's what you are where you're supposed to be. All the decisions you've made your entire life put you exactly where you are. So you are where you're supposed to be because those decisions got you here. But looking at your life and what you're doing, obviously you were built for this. And so we need people in the world to go have these experiences and share these types of things, whether it's for motivation, inspiration, or just sharing those experiences and teaching others on life and how to experience more. So I
Mm.
appreciate you taking time to do this. You know what? Hopefully we can do this again because there's 9 million other questions I have, but we're going to run out of time. And I'd love to get more into just the conversation of just like with your coaching and those types of things. I think you bring so much to the table with it. So, any parting words for us, Keyen? You got anything good? You got any nuggets for us? Anything that you're like, hey, this is some really good advice for somebody.
Well, first, I want to say just thank you so much for having me on here, Jeff. I'm really glad I was able to do this and felt super excited about doing it. And I think it's really cool that you have this podcast and you're wanting to just help so many people and bring some good, valuable information to the world. So this is a pleasure being on here. And final thoughts. I can imagine a lot of people that will be listening to this are from South Dakota.
Yep.
And being a guy that's from South Dakota, I know what it's like to live in South Dakota. And I love my people and I love where I'm from. But it's also important to understand that being from South Dakota comes with a certain level of natural complacency that is very difficult to be able to move beyond and past. So if you can understand that, you're kind of having to go against the natural energy of the place. It can maybe give yourself a little bit of grace in regard to not going after what it is that you want. So having that information and knowledge can be important to know, but then can help you move beyond where you are. So I love South Dakota. I love the people in South Dakota, but naturally the essence of the place isn't one of expansion and growth. So if you want to be able to embody more of a mindset of expansion and growth, it could be important for you to give yourself permission to expand beyond where you are from.
Well said. Very well said. I agree with you 100%. Proud of where I'm from. I live in this state, but it's a natural tendency for people here to find some comfortability. You have to. If you live in this type of environment and you're willing to stay here, you obviously have some sort of a reason to really dig in and find your roots and really hang in here. So Keyen, once again, thank you so much. We'll do this again. Hopefully, when maybe I catch you when you're back in the States and your schedule allows it. But God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your time. And you know what? Maybe when you get back from Russia, that would be a great time for us to connect again.
Yeah, and when I'm back in South Dakota, I'm sure I'll be back somewhere during that time period. And that'd be cool if we could rock and roll the second one in person.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, that would be perfect. Maybe we could do something together at that time. So, all right, man. Take care of yourself. Thank you.